I'm Rabbi Jay Karzen.
And I'm Rabbanit Ruby Ray Karzen.
And Tape with Rabbi Doug is next.
We're gonna see Rabbi Doug. We're gonna see Rabbi Doug. We're gonna see Rabbi Doug on your TV tonight. But Daddy, I want to watch Monday Night Football.
Forget about Monday Night Football. There's no other thing we're gonna watch on Monday but Rabbi Doug.
Yeah, Rabbi Doug on TV tonight. We're gonna see Rabbi Doug. Oh, everybody talk about Doug.
Shalom and welcome to Taped with Rabbi Doug. We are here, and with me today is Uri Karzen, Rabbi Uri Karzen from Hebron, the City of Hebron, the Jewish Community of Hebron. He is the Director General of the Jewish Community of the City of Hebron in Israel. Hebron, most famous probably for the Cave of Machpela, the Ma'arat Machpela, the resting place, the burial cave of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, and Leah, all spoken about in the Torah, purchased by Abraham from Ephron the Hittite, Ephron Achiti, and for 400 Arba Meot shekel kesef, special silver coins at the time, those coins would be worth, billions of dollars today. And what are you doing in Chicago?
Well, first of all, as you mentioned, Doug, thank you for inviting me on the show. It's a pleasure to always be with you. And we've been doing this for
years.
For years and years. We started doing this when we were children. We used to do these things together. So yeah. It's really a pleasure to be here and speak with you today and your listeners. Hebron, our job is to develop Hebron, to develop the Jewish community of Hebron. And of course, we work on two different planes. We build the physical buildings, and we put the families inside the Jewish community of Hebron. But we also deal with a lot of hasbara, a lot of tourism. So we're trying to connect people to Hebron, have people connect to the city, where they're Jews and connected to their roots, where Abraham is the father of all the Abrahamic religions. So really, all the Western world is connected to Hebron, and we're trying to promote that so people come and connect.
So let's do a little background now. Of course, we've talked about this on the show before, but you haven't been on the show for a few years. So I want to review a little bit. First of all, we grew up together in the suburbs of Chicago. We were neighbors. Uri's father, Rabbi Jay Karzen, and his wife Ruby. That's my Rabbi in Rebbitzin, who I'm still in close touch with. They live in Yerushalayim, in Jerusalem. Uri, when you went on Aliyah as a young adult, you moved to Kiryat Arba. Kiryat Arba is a suburb, part of Hebron, but a suburb of Hebron, up on top of the hill above Hebron. And you lived there, you learned there, and eventually, after you and your wife Shelley, also from Chicago, got married and everything, you moved to live in Hebron. And when you lived in Hebron at the beginning, Hebron wasn't even developed as a Jewish community because it was destroyed in 1929? 1929, there was a massacre. How many Jews died during that massacre? 67 Jews. A yeshiva, a Jewish school. The students were murdered. Many of the teachers were murdered.
My name is Avraham Kiryati. I was born in Hebron. I was born in Hebron in 1990. My name is Rachel Graciani. I was born in Hebron in 1924. The events took place in 1929. I was 10. When the riots broke, I was 5 years old.
It was after the midday prayers when heard in the distance a sort of roar like a football crowd, singing, shouting with a sort of rhythmic fury.
Then Grand Mufti of Jerusalem, Hajj Amin al-Husseini, he accused the Jews of wanting to collapse the mosques on the Temple Mount. That led to Muslim rioting.
Another policeman came in with blood all down the side of his uniform, and he told me the killing had started in the Jewish quarters.
We peeked through the window and we saw an angry Arab mob. And I see them, a big crowd, with swords in their hands, swords and knives. It didn't take long and they arrived at our home. We climbed up to the roof and hid there. We heard the screaming. We were afraid, very afraid. One of the first houses they assaulted was my brother's. The mob stormed into the house, and before he had a chance to do anything, they chopped off his hand, and he became one of the first casualties. The mob went from house to house and killed with knives and axes 66 Jews.
This man here was the leader of the community. They killed him, his son, his wife's parents. The only one left is the little boy who was a year old at the time.
I was stabbed in the forehead. When it got quiet and the mob left, people came out of their hiding places and tended to the injured and the dead. One of the women shouted, "The baby is breathing!" They took me out from among the casualties. That's how I was saved. We started realizing the scope of the disaster. We saw through the window that stretchers were coming out of my brother's house, and bodies and people. I saw my father lying dead on the ground. I can't forget that. There's no way I would forget that.
On the third day, they brought in buses and trucks, shipped them all out to Jerusalem, and that was basically the end of the Jewish community of Hebron, a community that had been here continuously for literally hundreds and thousands of years. We were the ones who were the victims, and then we were expelled.
My heart aches. I'm a refugee from Hebron. I see myself as a refugee.
And it wasn't until what year that the Beit Hadassah was was it right after 1967 when Hebron became part of Israel again, or was it after that?
We'll start a little bit before that.
Okay.
Hebron always had a Jewish community throughout all of history. Okay, almost all of history until the 1929 riots that you mentioned. The British were in charge of the area at the time. And they decided that after 1929, they couldn't protect the Jews there anymore, so they told them they had to leave, and that was it. And there were no Jews in Hebron until 1968. You have the 1967 war, where Israel liberates the Judean Samaria, including the city of Hebron.
In 1967, the Jewish people took back their ancient capital and reunited Jerusalem. And while millions of people celebrate this day, they often overlook what happened only one day later. Rabbi Shlomo Goren was not satisfied with having only Jerusalem. The Jewish people also needed Hebron and the tombs of the fathers and mothers there. The morning right after Jerusalem's liberation, Rabbi Goren and his driver set out for Hebron under the assumption that they were catching up to the rest of the IDF. But when they got to Hebron, there were no soldiers in sight. To Rabbi Goren's surprise, the rest of Hebron was quiet. Only the waving white flags of surrender could be seen outside of the houses that lined the streets leading up to the tomb of Machpela. Meanwhile, the IDF was planning a strategic attack on Hebron from the nearby hills, not knowing that Rabbi Goren had already taken the city. Seeing the hand of God in action, Rabbi Goren went right up to the tomb of Machpela, planted a makeshift Israeli flag outside, and entered the ancestral burial grounds of the Jewish people for the first time in 700 years. Rabbi Goren's actions opened the doors of the tomb of the Machpela to future generations, allowing Jews and Bible lovers from all over the world to visit Hebron and pray there. This year marks the 50th year of Hebron's liberation. Hebron's citizens and its soldiers are on the front lines every day to ensure a Jewish presence in Hebron and allow people like you to visit anytime.
And there's a group that organizes from Israel under the command of Rabbi Moshe Levinger and Moshe and Miriam Levinger, his wife. They went to the hotel in Hebron. They came to the guy who was Erev Passover, Erev Pesach in 1968. They came in and they told the owner of the hotel that we're renting out this place for an unspecified amount of time. They brought in their refrigerators and their ovens, everything you need for Pesach's day, right? Everything. They came in with everything, and they stayed there. When the government realized that they're dealing with a very feisty group of people, they told them, look, you guys can't stay here. We're going to move you to the government compound, the government military compound. And there they lived for several years under very different conditions, until in 1970, the government takes a decision that they're going to build a Jewish community in Hebron, but not inside the city itself, next door. And that became what
Kiryat
eventually is
Arba.
Kiryat Arba. Right? So Kiryat Arba was built in 1970. In 1978, the same original people who founded the community in Kiryat Arba, the ones who were in that government military compound, they decided that Kiryat Arba is good, this is what we wanted. We wanted to live in the city itself. So then they began different attempts to move into the Jewish property that was abandoned in Hebron. Okay, the one that you mentioned was Beit Hadassah. It was the original Hadassah Hospital.
Right.
It was a building that was built.
They came in and squatted there. They came
inside there, and the government took them out, and they went back. And then eventually they came with a group of women and children in the middle of the night, and the government didn't know what to do with them, let them stay. They said, how long are these people going to actually last there? Okay, and the conditions are horrible. Okay, the Arabs took this building and they used it as a garbage dump. I was rat infested and everything you can possibly imagine. They cleaned it up a little bit. They sat there. The will of these women was stronger than the will of the Israeli government, and they decided, okay, you know something? You guys can stay, but you can't have your husbands here. No problem, we're staying. And they said, not only that, anyone who leaves the building can't come back. They said, no problem. How is it that broke? How did they break that thing? There was a lady inside this building. Her name was Shoshana Peretz, and Shoshana Peretz was 9 months pregnant. So she told them that, okay, you know, I'm having contractions, I have to go to the hospital. I said, you know, okay, lady, you can go, but you realize you're not on the list of people who are allowed, you're on the list of people allowed to come back in, but your baby isn't, so you won't be able to take your baby back into the building. So if that's the case, okay, I have my baby here, that's it. So the government was, they decided that they didn't want to deal with that, this machine gun to deal with, so they let her go out, come back. She had a baby girl, and her name was Hadassah. Okay, that's what they named the girl afterwards. And eventually, the will of the people won, okay, and the husband's allowed in, and so on and so forth. And that in all practical purposes, was the beginning of the
Jewish community
in the city itself. Right.
Now, how long was it before they brought prefabs and trailers in for people to actually live in Hebron?
We're talking about, from 1980. Probably the prefabs started coming in about 7 years later. About 7 years later, but different properties. At that time, the prefabs only brought into one particular place where there was no buildings left. Okay, that was they called it the Avraham neighborhood. In 1948, Jordan conquers the area. Okay, according to the original partition plan, the whole area, what's known as the quote-unquote West Bank, was supposed to be part of Israel proper. The 1948 war breaks out, and Jordan conquers this area. It's over the agreed border. So Jordan was established in 1946. They broke out of their borders and they attacked Israel, along with all the other surrounding Arab armies, and they took over what's known as the West Bank. Okay, at that point, they tried to destroy all signs of Jewish life inside of Jerusalem, the old city of Jerusalem, and also in Hebron. All right, and one of the places they destroyed was the Avraham Avinu neighborhood, which is considered the Jewish quarter. So when we came back in 1968, we came back to look at this place. There was nothing there. So they had to put in, but the other properties, other Jewish properties that were in Hebron, the people moved in, they renovated them, and they're living there to this day.
Now, of course, the Avraham Avinu neighborhood has been renovated. The synagogue has been cleaned up, and it's a beautiful synagogue, and they've built above it, and they've done all that construction there. It's a beautiful area now. What is with the partition of the Arab side of Hebron and the partition and the Jewish side of Hebron? How is the peace? Do you feel safe walking through the neighborhoods, that nobody is coming in to cause trouble? I know there's always, of course, a presence of police and army to keep things safe. But you know, like when I was there with you in 1980, there was a sniper shooting in Hebron when people were walking to the Cave of Machpela on Friday night. Thank God you and I didn't decide to go that night, but that was the original plan. And you know, how do you keep those things from happening when you're side by side like that?
Okay, yes, we have a felt IDF presence in Hebron, and the city itself is divided between a Jewish area, which is essentially 3% of the city. Okay, there's 3% of the city where the only non-Jews allowed to walk around there, Arabs allowed to walk around there, and people have something to do there. They're not allowed to business, that kind of thing, right? Or they live there. That's kind of. Otherwise, it's not open to everyone at this point. You know, you mentioned in 1980 it was in the sniper. There was a full-fledged terror attack on the Beit Hadassah.
Right.
The mayor of Hebron today was one of the terrorists who organized the terror cell.
Wow.
He was elected to the, and that's an amazing thing. As I think 4 months ago, he was elected to be the mayor of Hebron. How can you believe that? And so the Israeli government does not have any direct connection with him, but they refuse to deal with him. But this guy is a convicted terrorist. He sat in jail on the murder of 6 people. He sat for 3 years, and eventually is released on some unfortunate prisoner exchange, which we were against at the time. And eventually this guy comes back to Hebron and becomes elected mayor.
Wow.
On merits of the fact that he killed Jews.
Wow. So tell me about this official position that you're in. You were hired by this group, elected, hired, I'm not sure exactly, you can tell me how that works. But you're working as a paramedic, you're Torah teaching and all those things that you were doing, and now you're part of the government of the Jewish Community of Hebron. How did that become developed, and what is your goal? Is your goal to, I know you talked about at the beginning, you talked about tourism, you talked about building up the city. Is it a PR thing? Is it a fundraising thing to get the funds together to do it? What is the overall goal of this governmental body that's running Hebron? And is there a Jewish mayor of the Jewish side of Hebron? That's another question I wanted to ask you.
Okay, I'm the Director General of the Jewish Community, which means that I'm entrusted with the mission of the people who live in Hebron. Okay, the people who live in Hebron aren't living there because they have a beach and they have a golf course and they have a great shopping center next door. Okay, the people are there on a mission, a life mission, to renew the Jewish community that was erased by the jihad forces back in 1929. I mean, the same people who are fighting us today. It's the great-grandchildren of the people who were fighting us back then. And we're there to push back on that. We're there to push back on that. We see that the establishment of the Jewish community now is the ultimate answer to the jihadist terror. That's it. You know, you tried to erase us, we're pushing back, and we're going to rebuild Jewish life in this place. Now, there are two things. You have one, the rebuildings I mentioned. The other side is connecting Jewish people to Hebron and others. Okay, Hebron today, with all the different tourism projects we have, the museum, archaeological excavations, all these different things, we have about 800,000 visitors a year, which is very significant amount of people. So between that, obviously the tourism, bringing the tourism, the different tourism projects, and the building, yes, we find ourselves traveling sometimes raising money for that because it's, we have the know-how, we have the guts and everything, but of course we need participation of people worldwide in order to make this dream, make this mission come true.
Now, when this show airs in a few weeks, this may be already solved, but what is the official opinion of the community in Hebron and the Jewish community about the metal detectors now on the Temple Mount before the mosque, and what is the idea of metal detectors for the Cave of Machpela? I do want to know just a little bit about that because that's obviously in the news right now today.
I'm going to push you back now to 1967. Okay. Israel wins the 1967 war. One of the
the Six-Day War.
Six-Day War, right? In the Six-Day War, the war hero was considered Moshe Dayan.
Right.
Moshe Dayan with the patch. But he did something that was inexcusable. Okay? He gave the keys to Temple Mount to the Arab Waqf. He told them, we don't want this place, this is yours. So the Temple Mount, which is sitting in the heart of Jerusalem, the Temple is the heart of the Jewish religion. It's where the Holy Temple was built. And one day, we hope it will be rebuilt. Moshe Dayan decided to give back them. It's not ours, we don't need it, we're in trouble. So we're talking about the Six-Day War was 50 years ago. 50 years ago. It sort of developed into an autonomous area where Israel has more or less lost its sovereignty. So when you have terrorists coming out there and they're shooting and killing police officers, and then we want to guarantee that that doesn't happen anymore, make sure there are metal detectors going onto the hill. Like, you have metal detectors going to theaters, metal detectors you mentioned the Cave of Machpela in Hebron. Of course we have metal detectors there. There's no question about it. So the thing is, it's not the metal detectors. The Arabs feel like they're losing their sovereignty. Israel's all of a sudden coming, and they are expressing, yes, we're the Baal, but we belong to this place. It's not going to be yours anymore. You're not going to do everything that crosses your mind. You're not going to use this place as a terrorist heaven. You don't follow me on Twitter, but on Twitter we put out pictures of how the Arabs on their prayer carpets.
I did see that on your
You
Twitter.
saw that?
No, I follow you, but I don't go to Twitter very often, but I did see that, yeah.
So you see that these guys have like these mounds of rocks that they're preparing to throw at the IDF and the Israeli police there. I mean, that's how they're preparing for prayer. Okay, it's an amazing thing. So Israel is once again reasserting its sovereignty that we volunteered to get up in 1967 because of Moshe Dayan, and we get to the results today. So they don't like that. That's the thing. Should there be metal detectors? There are metal detectors in everything. You go to a soccer game in Israel, there are metal detectors. Okay? I mean, you go into the airport. I've been traveling here. I don't know, these TSA people they drive you nuts, okay? And we're not talking about taking off your shoes or taking off your belt. They'll take off the shoes anyways. They're going to a mosque. But we're not talking about all these different things, okay? We're just talking a simple metal detector. When you walk into any shopping center, there's no reason in the world. If their intentions are peaceful, if they're going there just to pray, there's no reason in the world
to make a difference.
Right. Absolutely.
I see. All right, I understand that. So tell me what's new. Now let's go to what's new in Hebron. What's new in Israel? What is not making news yet that's going to make news on a positive front?
Well, one of the things that just recently made news was the UNESCO decision. Okay, and that had people up in arms. I mean, here you had...
Yeah, tell our viewers that don't know, it's been in the paper recently also. This is all real recent.
Okay. UNESCO is a UN organization. They have one of the bodies that work under the title of the UN, United Nations. It stands for the United Nations Education, Science, and Cultural Organization. And these people have the mandate to protect and educate the world's population, to protect World Heritage Sites. They have to promote culture and understanding between people and diversity and all the good things that the UN was created to make peace among people. And all of a sudden the Palestinians come along, okay, under the Palestinian Authority, and they decide that they're going to fast track. It's called fast tracking because there's a site in Hebron that's under danger of being destroyed. Now, what do you think? You think of the ISIS destroying all the different things in Iraq and all these different places where they're taking, these World Heritage Sites, and they're with jackhammers and tearing apart. That's what you think of. And the Arabs decided to use this in order to it's another tool to turn UNESCO into a political tool in order to attack Israel. And what happens is this is nothing short of identity theft. Okay, they come in there and they decide the Bible, the Old Testament is garbage, we're throwing this out. The Cave of Machpela is a sacred and it's an endangered site, that's why we have to fast track it. It's endangered, the Jews are destroying it obviously. And what it's for, it's from this Mamlukian history there. Now the Mamluks came around between the 13th and 16th century, okay? There's no mention of Abraham. Okay, Abraham, the founding father of the Jewish religion, lived 4,000 years ago. The building that we pray in, that they claim is being destroyed, was built 2,000 years afterwards by a Jewish king Herod. He built the structure in order to allow Jewish prayer in this place. Okay, and by the way, if you're visitors who haven't seen the Cave of Machpela, it's the only building that's 4,000 years old. It's 2,000 years old. 2,000 years old, right? Was built for the original intent. It's used today for the original intent it was built. Okay, and that was a Jewish prayer place. And here these people come along and say, no, this is a Muslim heritage site. That's it. Why? Because the Mamluks took over in the 1200s, which is a total absurdity. And out of the 21 voting parties here, 12 of them said yes. Okay. I think 2 said no and 6 abstained, which is already an accomplishment for UNESCO. But of course it passed, and I mean, we're just joking about it, that it was the greatest PR stunt that could ever be for Hebron, because all the people, all the world would just do like an uproar, you know, a cry.
You're on the front pages, Hebron's on the front pages.
Yeah, so, you know, and then Bibi Netanyahu, our prime minister, comes out and says he's going to take off $1 million to give me, instead of giving to the UN, he's going to encourage Jewish heritage studies in Hebron, build a museum, and so on and so forth. So we'll see if that's going to happen, but that's something else.
It's beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Unbelievable how time is running by. We only have a few minutes left. Is there something you want to share with the viewers here in the Chicago area and around the world watching our show that maybe has not brought them to Hebron yet? You know, a lot of people go to Israel and they don't go to Hebron because Hebron has an aura around it of the Arabs are right next door. They're right there. They come to the Cave of Machpela every day because they do their own prayers there 5 times a day, and the Jews are only there 3 times a day. And there are days, a whole week in the year, I think, coming up that Jews aren't even allowed to go there because of Muslim holiday. You know, what is the one message that we should have?
People should come. People should come. They're Jews that pray there every day, and they're 10 days out of the year. They're sporadic. They're not together. But 10 days out of the year, where Jews are not allowed in the Cave of Machpela, we pray from the outside. And
that's out of courtesy to the Muslim religion.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you know, it's a sort of thing that everybody feels home in Hebron. Why? Because you go to your parents' house, it's your home. And Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and the mothers, it's all home. You know, in other countries and other religions, they have a thing called the Founding Fathers. If you go to Washington, you see the Washington Monument, the Lincoln Monument, you have all the different stuff. You go to Mount Rushmore, you have the Founding Fathers. But here we have the Founding Fathers and Founding Mothers. It's about family. Hebron is about family. And you know, yes, we pray in the cave of the patriarchs where they were buried, but that's not the important part.
I want to mention, in the structure built above the cave, so that, and with special religious ways, so even a Kohen can come up in there and pray, because there's no tumah up into the synagogue part of the building. Right. So that's a wonderful thing.
Right. So it's not, Hebron isn't just a place where the avot and the imahot, the matriarchs and patriarchs were buried. It's a place where they lived. And we're following their footsteps. And the way to do it, you can come. People who haven't been to Hebron and been there before, come as a second time. Come. That's the place to, that's the place to pray. That's the place to connect to history and to connect to your roots.
Well, I know that my children, both my older children, have been there, and I've been there with you a number of times, and it is an amazing place. It's a beautiful place. Seeing it back from the early 80s to today is like a different world, and the way the buildings are built up, and then looking at Kiryat Arba, seeing a whole city right above it there, which was nothingness before 1967. It's just an amazing thing. I want to thank you so much for being on the show again and for coming to Chicago, sharing the message of Hebron, of the Jewish community in the city of Hebron. And I want to thank all of you for being with us. Remember, you can check out our website, www.tvrabbi.com, where you can also see former shows on the web, including former shows with Reb Uri as a guest, and former shows with his parents, Rabbi Jay and Ruby Karzen, as guests on my show, as they have been probably more than almost anybody else. They've been on my show almost every year since my show's been on the air, pretty close to that. And if you want to email Uri or the City of Hebron, you can send us an email, info@tvrabbi.com. I will forward that to him, and I know he will respond personally back to you. Remember, we're on every week at this time. Hope to see you next week right here on Taped with Rabbi Doug. Shalom, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Gonna see Rabbi Doug. Gonna see Rabbi Doug on the TV tonight.
This has been a Taped with Rabbi Doug production.